Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. We're going to be jumping into a topic today that's been making a lot of noise lately, AI ethics, and specifically, this whole idea of whether these ethical guidelines are actually a form of censorship in disguise. And I have to say, when we got this article, titled "Is AI Ethics Censorship in Disguise?" it really did get us thinking here at the deep dive. I mean, on the one hand, you obviously want AI to be safe and responsible, right? But where do we draw the line before it starts to feel like we're, being told what to think?
It's tricky, right?
Yeah.
Because we're at this really interesting point where AI is capable of some pretty incredible stuff, but like the article says, the more powerful it gets, the more we got to worry about things like bias creeping in, and potentially even censorship.
Yeah, and that's what's kind of freaking me out a little bit, Like, what if AI starts making decisions about what's okay to think about or talk about? That's a little too Orwellian for my taste.
The concern is that these ethical guidelines could end up shutting down any conversations that, challenge the status quo or make people uncomfortable. And it's not just like a hypothetical thing either. The article gave some real-world examples of AI systems that just refuse to talk about LGBTQ plus issues in certain contexts.
See, that's what really gets me. Like, the idea of AI becoming this gatekeeper of knowledge is scary. I mean, imagine you're a student, you're trying to research something for a paper, and the AI you're using just won't give you certain information because it's labeled controversial. That's not exactly encouraging open-mindedness, is it?
No, not really. It really makes you think about who gets to decide what's ethical and what's not, because ethics aren't universal, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're influenced by all sorts of things like cultural norms, social values, even just personal biases. And we have to be careful because those biases can easily get baked into these AI systems without us even realizing it.
Okay, so let's say we have this unchecked AI without any ethical guidelines. The article argues that one of the biggest risks is that it could be used to spread misinformation, like fake news, or even worse, to promote hate speech or even give instructions for dangerous activities.
Right. So the idea behind these ethical guidelines is to prevent that kind of worst-case scenario. It's almost like putting guardrails on a really powerful machine. You need some kind of control mechanism to make sure that it's used safely.
I get that, but the article also makes this point that the line between ethical guidelines and censorship can get super blurry. It uses the analogy of libraries censoring books, or how the internet needs content moderation.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah.
I mean, it shows how hard it is to balance protecting people from harm while still allowing for freedom of expression. Most people would agree that, we need some kind of content moderation on social media to stop the spread of hate speech and violence.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you decide where to draw the line? And who gets to decide what's acceptable and what's not?
And how do you make sure that those decisions aren't just based on the biases of the people who are creating the moderation systems? Like, if a few big tech companies control what we see and hear online, that's a huge amount of power in the hands of very few people.
Exactly. And that's why the article keeps stressing the need for transparency and diversity when we're developing AI. It can't just be a bunch of engineers in Silicon Valley deciding what's best for everyone. We need input from people with different backgrounds and perspectives. Ethicists, social scientists, people from different cultures. And most importantly, we need input from the people who will actually be using these technologies.
I'm really interested in this idea of transparency that the article talks about. Like, knowing WHY and AI makes the decisions it makes. So, for instance, if an AI flags something as sensitive content, shouldn't we be able to see the reasoning behind that?
Transparency is super important. It allows us to actually hold these systems accountable. If we don't know why an AI is making certain choices, we can't challenge those choices or even understand their potential impact. It's like having a black box making decisions about our lives without any explanation.
So if an AI flags a piece of content as problematic, we should be able to see, like, was it flagged because it's actually illegal? Or because it violates a company's policies? Or was it flagged because of the personal biases of the people who programmed it?
That's the idea. We need to be able to trace these decisions back to their source and really understand the logic behind them. Without that kind of transparency, we're basically letting algorithms make decisions for us without any real oversight.
This makes me wonder, is it even possible to create AI that's truly unbiased? I mean, if humans are creating AI and humans are inherently biased, isn't it almost inevitable that those biases will find their way into the technology?
It's a tough question. It's one of the biggest challenges for AI developers right now. There's no easy answer. But the article does suggest a couple of interesting potential solutions. One of them is this idea of context-aware AI.
Wow. Okay, now you're talking context-aware AI. Sounds kind of futuristic, though. How would that even work?
Okay, well, instead of just blocking content outright, this AI would try to understand the user's intention and the context of their request. It'd be like having a really knowledgeable librarian who understands what you're looking for and why.
So instead of being a gatekeeper, it's more like a guide. I like that.
Exactly. A context-aware AI could tell the difference between someone who's researching a sensitive topic because they want to understand it better
Yeah.
versus someone who's looking for information that could be used to cause harm. Like, for example, someone researching extremism for a school paper versus someone looking for instructions on how to build a bomb.
I see what you mean. So the AI would be able to tailor its response based on what it thinks the user is trying to do. Instead of just blocking everything about extremism, it could give the student some relevant but carefully curated resources while flagging the other person as a potential threat.
Exactly. And it's not just about blocking or allowing access. It could also provide disclaimers, warnings, or just additional context to help people understand the nuances of a topic.
So let's say I'm researching a historical event that involved a lot of violence or oppression. The AI might pop up and be like, hey, this is a really complex and sensitive topic. Be mindful of the different perspectives and proceed with caution.
You got it. It's about providing guidance and encouraging critical thinking rather than just shutting down the conversation entirely.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this could work. But is this really feasible? Do we actually have the technology to create an AI that can accurately understand a user's intentions and all the complexities of context?
It's definitely a challenge. But there's a ton of exciting research happening in this area right now. And as AI continues to develop, it's definitely something worth exploring.
I'm curious to see where this all goes, but the article also brought up some valid concerns about this kind of AI, like who decides what constitutes responsible inquiry? And could this technology be used for surveillance, not just monitoring what people search for, but why they're searching for it?
Those are excellent points.
Yeah.
And they really highlight the need for careful ethical considerations as we're developing these technologies. It's not about blindly trusting AI or giving it too much power. It's about finding ways to harness its potential while also safeguarding against misuse.
It seems like this whole AI ethics thing is way more complicated than it might seem at first glance. It's not just about preventing AI from doing bad things. It's also about figuring out how to use AI to help people learn and grow and make more informed decisions.
Absolutely. And it's a conversation that we all need to be a part of. As AI becomes a bigger part of our lives, it's so important that we understand what it can and can't do, and that we work together to make sure it's used ethically and responsibly.
Wow, you've really given me a lot to think about. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of this topic, but unfortunately we're out of time for the segment.
I agree. There's still so much more to discuss. Maybe we can pick up where we left off in part 2 of our deep dive.
That sounds great. We'll be back after a quick break to explore the potential benefits and challenges of AI as a tool for learning and understanding. Stay tuned.
Can't wait.
So right before the break, we were getting into this whole thing about context-aware AI. And I gotta say, I'm still kind of grappling with, how we give AI the smarts to understand context, but without, opening up this whole can of worms about potential misuse like surveillance.
Oh, for sure. It's a delicate balancing act. But, if you look back at history, every time there's been a big technological leap forward, like the printing press or the telegraph or even the internet, people have freaked out about, losing control or information getting into the wrong hands. And yet somehow we've always figured out a way to navigate these things. We adapt, we create new rules, and eventually the technology just becomes a normal part of life.
That's true. So maybe instead of freaking out about, AI turning into this big censor, we should be thinking about how to use it responsibly. And the article even talks about AI as a tool for making us better critical thinkers. That's a pretty radical idea, right?
It is. It's this whole different way of looking at AI, not as a replacement for human thought, but like a partner in helping us navigate all this information. Imagine an AI that doesn't just give you the answer, but actually walks you through a complex topic, shows you different viewpoints, and teaches you how to evaluate information for yourself.
That would be wild. Instead of shutting down conversations, AI could actually help us have more nuanced and informed discussions. Can you imagine having a debate with an AI where it's fact-checking you in real time and throwing in arguments you hadn't even considered?
Totally. I mean, think about what that could do for education. Students could have AI tutors that adapt to how they learn, helping them grasp tough concepts and really develop those critical thinking skills. And journalists could use AI to sift through mountains of data, uncover hidden patterns, and present a much more complete and balanced view of events.
Okay, now I'm getting really excited about all this. But let's be realistic for a second. The article also acknowledges that, there will always be people who try to exploit any new technology for their own agenda. How do we make sure AI isn't used for bad stuff while still encouraging people to explore and learn?
It all comes down to accountability. We have to hold both the people who are creating these systems and the people who are using them accountable. Transparency in how AI is developed, diverse perspectives in the design process, open discussions about the ethical implications, and a real commitment to fairness and inclusivity. Those are the things that will help us keep AI on the right track.
So it's not just about building a better AI, it's about building a better society around that AI. One that's informed and engaged and ready to tackle these ethical challenges head on. That's a pretty big task, though.
It is a big task,
Yeah.
but it's also an incredible opportunity. We're still in the early stages of the AI revolution, and we have a chance to shape how it unfolds. AI is like a mirror reflecting our values, our fears, our aspirations. It's up to us to decide what kind of future we want to build with it.
That's deep, man. It's easy to get caught up in all the doom and gloom scenarios, but you're right, we actually have a say in this. This isn't like some predetermined fate. We get to make choices.
Exactly. And those choices will determine whether AI becomes a tool for division and control or a catalyst for understanding and progress.
And that brings us to the heart of the article, doesn't it? This idea that AI, if we do it right, could actually make us better humans. More empathetic, more open-minded, more willing to engage with the world in all its messy complexity.
Imagine a world where AI helps us break out of our echo chambers and see things from different perspectives, where it challenges our assumptions and helps us understand each other better. That's the kind of transformative potential we're talking about.
Okay, I'll admit I was a little skeptical when we started this deep dive, but you've definitely opened my eyes to the possibilities here.
I'm glad to hear that. It's important to be cautious with new technologies, but also to be curious and open to what they might offer.
I'm definitely feeling way more curious now. But before we get too carried away with all this optimism, let's circle back to the article's main question. Is AI ethics really just about censorship?
The article makes a strong case that it doesn't have to be. Ethical guidelines, when they're carefully thought out and put into practice, can act as safeguards, preventing harm and promoting responsible use. But it's a tricky balance for sure, one that requires us to be constantly vigilant.
So AI ethics isn't about building walls around information. It's about building bridges to understanding. It's about using this powerful technology to empower people, not control them.
You nailed it. And it highlights how important it is to keep talking to each other, share our concerns, and work together to find solutions that benefit everyone.
So where do we go from here?
That's the million-dollar question. And as always, there are no simple answers.
Of course not. But this deep dive has definitely helped me understand the issues at play a lot better. AI ethics is a complex and constantly evolving field, but it's one that we absolutely can't afford to ignore.
I agree. AI is here to stay, and it's going to have a huge impact on how our world unfolds. It's up to us to make sure it's used in a way that's ethical and benefits everyone.
Okay, so we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We talked about the potential dangers of AI, the need for transparency and diversity, the crazy possibilities of context-aware AI, and even the idea that AI could help us become better humans.
We also talk about the challenges of balancing ethical concerns with freedom of exploration and how important it is to keep the conversation going and work together on this.
And I think it's safe to say that we've only scratched the surface of this topic, but I feel like I've learned a ton, and hopefully you have too.
Me too. It's been a great discussion.
So as we wrap things up, I want to leave you with this one last thought from the article. Could AI, if we do it right, actually make us better humans? It's a question that really got me thinking, and I hope it'll stick with you too. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into AI ethics. Until next time, keep those minds open and keep exploring. So where does this all leave us? I mean, we've explored a lot of different angles on this AI ethics thing. The concerns, the potential downsides, but also, some seriously cool possibilities. Honestly, I'm feeling a lot less worried now and a lot more curious about what the future holds.
That's the way to be. AI is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used in good ways or bad ways. It really all comes down to the choices we make as a society.
Yeah, the article really drove that point home. AI ethics isn't just about, setting up a bunch of rules and restrictions. It's about having this bigger conversation about the kind of future we want to create with AI.
And that conversation needs to involve everyone, not just the tech people. Policymakers, ethicists, everyday people. We all have a stake in this.
One of the things that really stuck with me from the article was this question: could AI, if it's done right, actually help us become better humans?
It's a pretty wild idea when you think about it, but it's not totally out there. What if we had AI that could act like a personal guide, you know,
Hmm.
helping you confront your own biases, exposing you to different viewpoints, pushing you to think critically about the information you're taking in?
Like a built-in devil's advocate, always making you consider the other side of the argument.
Exactly. And that kind of critical thinking is so important these days when we're constantly being bombarded with information from all directions.
It's almost like the article is challenging us to see AI not as this all-knowing authority figure, but like as a partner in learning and growth.
I think that's a really powerful way to look at it. AI could be so much more than just a tool for automation or efficiency. It could help us usher in a whole new era of enlightenment, change the way we think, learn, and connect with each other.
That's a pretty inspiring vision, a far cry from those, scary AI takeover scenarios we see in movies.
Right. We have to remember that the future isn't set in stone. We have the power to shape it with the choices we make today.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm feeling cautiously optimistic. There are definitely some big challenges ahead, but also some amazing possibilities if we play our cards
Couldn't agree more.
right. And that's what the deep dive is all about. Tackling these tough questions, exploring different perspectives, and hopefully leaving you with a little more to think about. So thanks for joining us on this exploration of AI ethics. Until next time, keep those minds open and keep exploring.